Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Fiume, here live at the IFA2024 National Convention, and looking forward to interviewing some folks at this year's event. I am with Emily Jones from Profitkeeper. Emily, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. It's great to finally meet you in person.
Long time coming.
That's awesome. Emily, tell us what Profitkeeper is for those few people out there that don't know, and what you guys that do that are a little different than others.
Yeah. So Profitkeeper is a financial management platform exclusive to franchises. So we take and consolidate the financials, we push them up to the franchisor level for a brand overview, and then we present them back to the franchisees in a digestible visual format, in visual benchmarks, data, anything of that sort. And so it's the unit level economics that we give back to the franchisees. And I think something that's very different for us is we are super visual by design. And so a lot of franchisees, I started on support, and so I talk day in and day out to the franchisees, and they're not, they have no history in finance, anything like that. So talking to them and walking them through it, like the visual aspect of it is huge. The reports that kind of get inundated with information, kind of analysis paralysis, like there's so much information that the visual benchmarking and stuff is huge. And our support team, sitting with them, walking through, I'm a little biased because I came from support, but it's huge. We really hold their hand through the whole process.
That's awesome. I am a big fan of your company, and I'll admit that when I started out franchising, I did not even collect my franchisees' financials. Okay. And I had a reason behind it. My attorney said, don't collect them unless you're going to actually do something with it, right? Because if you're going to collect them but not do anything with it, and the mistake I made also was that I had an assumption that franchisees knew how to manage their financials, and I was more focused on the actual operations of the business. But you find that that's really common, right? Most franchisees do not have a financial background, or it's their first business that they're in. Yeah,
no, especially new franchisees. I'm glad that I had the experience like talking to franchisees day in and day out, training them, onboarding them, because I had some franchisees, I had to explain to them what a P&L was, the very basics of the business. I'm glad that I had that experience, because it really, helped me understand that like owning a business, there's so many different aspects to it, and the financials is just one aspect, and they need help. They don't know. So I think Profitkeeper really simplifies it and helps them understand the information and where are areas of opportunity, where are areas of weakness, and what to really focus on.
It changed our company forever once we started using like Profitkeeper and starting to see that like I said, that dashboard, and they understood where they were, where the holes were. And just, first of all, standardizing things across the board is so key, because otherwise people are running their business their own way with a separate chart of accounts, and it's like herding cats, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the apples to apples comparison, the universal chart of accounts, that's the key to Profitkeeper. If the information's not apples to apples, if it's not unified, then what's the point of even analyzing it?
There was another added benefit that I didn't realize early on, and that was by having this scorecard, so to speak, and franchisees seeing what other franchisees were doing and having these benchmarks, suddenly the difficult conversations that I or my team would have to have with the franchisee was a lot easier, because now they see what other franchisees are doing and they realize it's me that's making some of these mistakes, that I'm not managing some of my financials well, or I'm not spending enough in marketing, or I'm overspending employees, as opposed to saying, well, I need this much, I need to have this number of employees, or I need to charge this. And that's not the case. Once you have, the data doesn't lie, right? There's no emotion in data.
Mm-hmm. No, that's what you don't know does hurt you. And I was at some of the roundtables earlier, and one of them was on transparency, and franchisors, I found like a lot of them are very afraid of being transparent with their franchisees and the ranking and how they're performing and stuff like that, and they're scared to present that information back to their franchisees. But the moral of that story, from what I understood, was it's good. Like, they need to see if their sales are low, the franchisees already know that. It doesn't hurt to show them that they're in the red, because they already like feel it in their bank accounts and things like that. They know it, and really just seeing like where they're at should be motivation. It's like competition, and it elicits that like competitive environment, but healthy competition in collaboration between the different franchisees of like, okay, you're doing super well in this, like what vendors are you using? How can I, the ceiling is a lot higher, and they can understand like there is the possibility to be making that much money in those different areas and saving money in others. So I think from what I learned today that transparency is key, and that's kind of the core of Profitkeeper is transparency, and franchisors get a lot more in the reports. Like they can have ranking from 1 to 500. If you have 500 locations, you can see how every single franchisee is performing in every single GL account on the P&L. But franchisees, they have a little bit more privacy there. They can't really figure out each other's numbers, but they still can see where they're ranking. So I think that's huge.
It changed the dynamic and the depth of the conversation we were able to have. And I was one of those franchisors early on, like, oh, I'm okay with transparency, but am I going to really tick off the people that aren't doing well? But like you said, they already know they're not doing well, but the best part was they got to see what the possibilities were now. And now they're talking to their peers about it, and it takes the difficult conversations out of the equation as the franchisor. So I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. I'm so glad I got to meet you in person. It was finally, I've been supporting you, your podcast and everything like that. I appreciate what you do. It really helps me. I mean, being remote, it's hard to, in learning, it's my first year in the franchise industry, so it's hard to learn without that hands-on experience, and I feel like you interviewing these people that have had so much experience gives me insight, helps me feel like I know these people and I know their stories without actually meeting them in person, so I really appreciate it.
Emily, thank you. I'm a huge fan of yours too. Thanks for being on.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.